that. So with the with those teachings, again, as you said, pre-British and even going thousands of years ago, those traditions and those teachings are so strongly imbibed in the consciousness of Hindus that biodiversity is not a scientific concept to be taught to Hindus. It is part of their being, part of their spiritual teachings.
And let's just for our audience again, just let me say a few clarificatory words. Mahavir, who Pankaj referred to as the great founder and inspirer of Jainism, who was contemporary with the Buddha, and there are even some texts that purport to report conversations between them. And Jainism is an extremely careful religion about life. There are in some types of Jainism monks who will literally sweep the ground in front of them so they won't kill insects, will wear gauze masks so they will not inhale insects. This is a religion that is very, very serious about life and the sanctity of life. Coming back to your point about India preserving biodiversity, yeah, it's true, and tigers are increasing in population in India.
Right.
However, because of population growth and a need for fuel, in addition to dried cow dung and straw, people have cut down tremendous numbers of trees, and that seems to me a little bit in conflict with the notion of preserving everything.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, what is going on in last 10 or 20 years now, India is becoming mini America. So especially in cities and even in smaller towns, people are in this mad rush to acquire all the new iPods and cell phones and computers and cars and whatnot, and building big houses. And in that mad rush, definitely they are consuming more and more resources, and that's why we see this destruction going on in India also of the trees and whatnot. But I was talking about pre-British,
right?
Yeah.
And I want to make one small comment about cows in India, because there is a massive misconception in the West that here people are poor, or some people are undernourished in India, and you have all these cows walking around and people aren't eating them. In fact, in India, it makes more environmental sense to let a cow live and not to eat it, because here's what happens. First, when the cow lives and provides, especially if it has udders, it provides milk, which is vital. The cow also hauls things. A lot of carts still are propelled by cows and oxen.
Right.
And the cow dung is a very important, for many, many people in India, a very important source of cooking fuel.
Yes.
You take cow dung, you mix it with hay, you dry it, and it is a very efficient cooking fuel. Also, in some villages, cow dung is used to prepare the floor because it actually is antiseptic. It will kill insects.
Yes.
And finally, when the cow dies of natural... let me say one other thing. Urban cows in India are mostly owned by somebody. They're not just wandering around, and they're eating garbage. They're secondary recyclers of urban garbage.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very valuable ecological thing to do.
Right.
And so, and finally, when they die, quite often some of the lowest castes who will eat them. So you have almost a perfect ecological use of the cow in India, whereas in the West, people look at it and say it makes no sense. Let me come back now. Let's go to Gandhi. Because, in a sense, Gandhi's vision for India, in terms of khadi and living close to the environment, was a very Hindu, very ecological notion that really never took hold. What happened there?
Yeah, that's another one of those big ironies that these great teachers come and we never listen to them. We just to do what is with what is sort of looks good for our short-term interest. So for a few decades, I think India, in the legacy of Gandhi, Nehru, did listen to some of his teaching. At least he didn't go all out for capitalistic, industrial, consumerist, economical models. But as I said again earlier, after 90s, all the Gandhi and Nehruvian principles were sort of thrown out of the window, and now it's becoming more and more like any other industrialized nations, like in other societies here and even Japan, China. They're all, they're all becoming, I think, mini Americas. But going back to cows' comments that you were so nicely you were saying, one more thing that if I could add is that one of the basic teachings that Hindu children learn when they are in their childhood is that human is the only species who drinks milk from other species. And just like we consider our mother as very reverential because we drink milk of our mother, cow is also our mother because we drink milk of the cows. That's one of the fundamental teachings of in India. So that's one major reason that cows are treated with so much reverence, because we consume its milk just like we do of our own mothers. So those are small teachings that Gandhi lived in his entire life. Gandhi, as I mentioned in my article just published on Huffington Post, that Gandhi's entire life can be seen as an ecological treatise. This is one life in which every minute act, emotion, or thought function much like an ecosystem. His small meals of nuts and fruits, his morning ablutions and everyday bodily practices, his fastings, his fasts, his periodic observance of silence, his morning walks, his cultivation of the small as much as of the big, his spinning wheel, his khadi, as you mentioned, his abhorrence of waste. So there is a story that one night he lost a very small piece of his pencil, and he could not sleep entire night because he lost that pencil. And here I am living in this country, and I have a very small apartment, but every room in my apartment I have 5 pencils because of my children. So what a great how far we have come, including those who came from India and those who become Americanized after coming to this country. So how much we can't even imagine the reverence, the importance, the value the people like Gandhi gave for their natural resources, and here we are. We can just talk, I guess, at least.
Yes, well, let's come to contemporary India.
Yeah.
And as you point out, as the Indian economy grows, it becomes more of a consumerist economy.
Right.
As the Indian middle class grows, although there's tremendous poverty still in India, and poverty will remain for quite some time. But there's a separate middle and upper class that is becoming very acquisitive of consumer goods of all sorts. And so, as you point out, the gap between an Indian worldview or a Hindu worldview and a Western worldview begins to shrink. So what do you see happening in India in the future? Is this, there is an argument that once people become involved in this kind of consumerist society, there's no going back. It's an argument that people have made about the end of socialism in the Soviet Union and East Europe, that once people really saw the goodies that they didn't have access to, that was decisive. So how do you see India with its long history of ecological thought, and with I'm going to ask in a second about contemporary ecological movements in India, but how do you see India relating to this growing and perhaps inevitable consumerism?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can only express some hopes and, if possible, some cautious optimism, because what has happened throughout the thousands of years of history of Indian tradition, Indian societies, is as the outside influences came into India still kept its basic fundamentals, its, so to speak, its soul was always intact, and it always had its heart in the right place, even though outside influences is nothing new for India, starting from Alexander to Jews, Christians who came
to the Mughals
2,000 years ago. Yeah.
The Mughals?
Yeah, Mughals are very well known, but even Jews and Christians came to India
Yes.
2,000 years ago,
Yes.
Starting from St. Thomas and the first Jews who arrived in India when the first temple was destroyed. And even the Zoroastrians, the Persians from ancient Persia,
Yes.
with the distinct religion. Then, of course, the Islamics and Muslims and Mughals and then the British and Portuguese and whatnot. So all
And the
these
French,
outside,
for that matter.
Sorry?
And the French, for that matter.
French and Dutch and all,
Yeah, right.
any races or any culture that you can think of, you can find some traces in India. So all kinds of races, all kinds of racial features, bodily features, colors, languages. Every state is a different language. And with all the diversity and even all the outside influences, it seemed to have continued its spiritual soul or its fundamentals of this nonviolence and all the great traditions. And even those who came from outside, they became part of the Indian society. This great melting pot is always intact. It was going on. This melting or mixing of different cultures and races was going on for thousands of years. But this time, it seems like the 21st century that we are living in, it seems like who knows what will be the future like, if it'll succeed in continuing that spiritual base or not, is I think everybody's question. But I can say that even in cities and urban centers, there are long lines of youth and middle-aged people, those who spend hours and hours to get a glimpse of their deities in temples. So even in cities, even educated and doctors and engineers and scientists, at their core, at their heart, they are still very, very spiritual, and they're not discarding their tradition completely, even though they are embracing this capitalism and consumerism. So if a leader like Gandhi emerges again, like maybe not one person, but maybe decentralized Gandhi in every region of India, if those leaders come again and they reinterpret their traditions again in the service of ecology, probably there is some still hope again, and there are some few signs of at least some contemporary movements who are trying to connect their Hindu teachings with maybe cleaning of Ganga, the Ganges River in North India, and so on. So there are some signs, but the future is, I think, still uncertain.
Tell us about these contemporary ecological movements in India.
Right, yeah. So one big movement, as I think is very widely known, is the Chipko movement of 1970s, led by Sundarlal Bahuguna and Chandi Prasad Bhatt, and then Dr. Vandana Shiva wrote about it also, and many others. So what they did is these Hindu women, they embraced. Chipko literally means hugging, so they hugged literally the trees so that the outside poachers could not cut these trees. And that was a big movement, and it became a big success, and even Indian government and the state governments had to cancel all the fellings of these trees. So that was one big famous movement. But going back a few centuries before, the inspiration from Chipko really came from the Bishnoi community, which is in 17th century. As many as 363 people, led by a woman, Amrita Devi, did the exact same thing. They hugged the trees, and unfortunately, in that incident, those more than 300 people, they actually died because of the soldiers who wanted these trees, and then only later the nearby emperor of Jodhpur, Rajasthan, he makes a new law that not to cut the trees in at least in Bishnoi villages. So Bishnoi, then Chipko in last century, and then contemporary movements are, the one movement that I can mention is the Swadhyay movement, in which this Swadhyay means the self-study and a study of the self. And so it's not really an environmental movement, but the movement is basically to reinforce or remind the practitioners that divinity is within everybody and every particle of the universe. So whatever they do is kind of an expression of their divinity, of their divine energy. And what they have done is they have created more than 30 tree temples. So what they do is they go to these, they get this big piece of land in their villages and construct these gardens, and where the practitioners go every day and revere their trees as if they are in the temples, as if they are doing rituals in the temples. In the same spirit, they raise these trees, they revere these trees, and whatever outcomes, whatever fruits come as the outcome of these trees, that is treated as, after selling those fruits, that is treated as the Mahalakshmi, as the divine wealth. And that wealth is used for other similar projects in the villages, or doing some charity work in very silent, subtle way, hidden way, so that when charity is done, the receiver should not think that he or she has some inferiority complex and the donor has some superiority complex. So without those complexes, without this pride of doing charity, false pride of doing charity, it's done in very subtle way and very hidden way. So those kind of works are done by the Swadhyay Parivar, and they have also done recharge hundreds of thousands of